Hello everyone and welcome to today's lunchtime instalment of Rigs Remote. We've got a mobility focused class for you this lunchtime. So for those of you who have been sat down all morning at your laptops, at your desk, or you've got to be sat down for the rest of the day, it's a nice 35 minute class where we're going to be looking at your hips, looking at your T-spine and getting some mobility through those areas that are going to become particularly tight and immobile if you are spending more time sat down than you normally would be. Equipment wise, as always, we just need some empty space. Ideally, we're going to be on a soft surface, on a carpet or a yoga mat, just because that full body mobility routine is going to be mainly ground based. Before we get into that, we're going to start with a brief 4-minute warm-up, and then we're going to finish the session off with a core circuit. So for the warm-up, we're going to be going 40 seconds of jumping jacks, 20-second rest, 40 seconds of walkouts, 20-second rest, and we're going to repeat that once more for 4 minutes in total. So those 40 second of jumping jacks, we're going to be getting into this position there. So the ones that we've been doing in a lot of classes, a lot of you that are following along with these routines are going to be familiar with. Then we're going to have that little rest period, then we're going to get into our walkout. So feet facing forward underneath our hips. We're going to bring our hands down to the floor, and we're just looking to walk those hands out into the top of a push-up position, keeping our hips nice and high, keeping nice and strong, and then walking those hands back towards our feet and repeating that for the 40-second time period. So I'll pop the timer on now and we'll get straight into that warm-up. So going in 10 seconds, we're going to be starting with those jumping jacks. Out of a sort of 10 scale of 10 intensity, we're looking to be going at sort of a 4 out of 10 for this first period. So nothing too intense, but it's still worth just getting our blood flow, increasing our heart rate slightly before getting into this mobility routine. So nice, easy pace for the 40 seconds on the balls of your feet. Nice and light, shouldn't be able to hear heavy footsteps on the floor. Nice and springy. Another 10 seconds. Little 20-second rest period, so catch your breath back, and then we're going to be going into the walkout. So feet are facing forward. We're going to bring our hands down to the floor if we can. We want to be keeping a straight leg as we do so. And we're going to walk those hands out into the top of that push-up position. So my hips are nice and high. We're not dropping down to the floor. We're keeping that strong position. And then we're just going to walk those hands back to our feet, stand ourselves back up, and then repeat for this 40-second time period. Another 15 seconds, squeeze another rep or two in. Little 20-second rest period, and then we're going back into those jumping jacks. We're going to repeat those two exercises once more. Another 5 seconds and we're going. If you have tuned in, say hello in the comments. Let us know who's watching. Is this your first class, or have you been doing quite a few of these Rigs Remote classes? Gradually increasing that intensity a little bit more, so it's sort of 5 or 6 out of 10 now. Another 15 seconds. A couple more seconds of these, and then we're getting into one last 40-second period of the walkout. Ten more seconds rest. You've only just joined in. The walkouts, we're looking to get those hands to the floor, walking ourselves out to the top of a push-up position, keeping ourselves nice and tall, and then just walking our hands back to our feet. Stand ourselves up again and repeat for this 40-second time period. Once we've done that, that'll be the end of the warm-up. We'll grab ourselves a drink for a minute or two, and then we will get straight into that full body routine. Time for another rep. There we go, guys. Grab yourselves a drink for a minute or so, and then we'll get into that mobility routine.
We could be famous. We could be famous. We could be famous.
So you should be feeling nice and warm now. Nice little 4-minute warm up just to get a bit more blood flow, slightly increased heart rate before we go into this mobility routine. So as I've already said, those of you being sat down in the morning or sat down at your desk for lengthy periods or at the TV, whatever it may be, the two main areas we want to be looking at is your hips and then your T-spine, so your mid to upper back. So today's routine is going to really focus in on those as we go through it. For each of the stretches or mobility exercises, we're going to be doing 45 seconds with a 15-second period in between, just so we can switch sides or transition into the next exercise. I'll pop the timer on. 45 seconds per exercise, 15 seconds in between. We're going to be starting in a sat down position. So we'll be sat down, hands behind us. We're going to have those feet outside of our hips, and then from there we're going to be going into those hip swivels. So for those of you that have been doing these, this is one we have done before. So we're swiveling, taking both of those hips down to the right hand side. So we've got full internal, full external rotation, looking for about a 90-degree angle at both knees. We're going to come back to that start position, and then we're going to rotate down to the other side, trying to keep that chest facing forward as we do so. So timer's on, we're starting in 10 seconds, getting into that start position. And then we'll just start by rotating down to our right hand side, keeping that chest facing forward, getting that 90-degree angle, spending a second or two with those knees both touching the floor if we can, and then just rotating round to the other side. Keeping that chest facing forward, keeping those hands in contact with the floor. It's a nice one to get some movement through those hips, fully internally and externally rotating. Try and squeeze in a couple or more in the remainder of this time period. And then we're going to end up with both of those legs in that left position. So your left knee is the one that's on the outside of your body. From there, you're going to be twisting that torso across that left leg, popping your right hand on top of it, and then keeping that spine nice and neutral. We're then looking to just lean forward into that stretch, getting a nice deep stretch through the outside of that left hip. Try and lean forward into it. We can lean across that leg. We can lean away. Find the sort of the angle where you're feeling that stretch the most. Again, we want to try and keep nice and tall. We don't really want to be ending up massively flexed, massively rotated over. So we should be feeling a nice stretch in the outside of that left glute. When we get into the stretching components, we want nice deep breaths. So we're just switching on that parasympathetic nervous system. A nice rest and relax. 5 more seconds in this position. And then we're just going to switch over, swivel ourselves across to the right. This time the left hand's going on top of the right ankle, twisting over to the right and just leaning towards that right knee, feeling that stretch on the outside of that right hip. Leaning forward, playing around with the different angles of your torso just to make sure you're hitting as many different fibers as possible and just finding the particular area that is tight for you. For our next one, we're going to stay in this position, and this time we're going to be looking to activate our left glute. So staying in this sort of position where our knees are to the right, we're going to look to lift our left foot off the floor by activating our glute in there. So if I spin myself back, you've got both angles there. So from there, we're looking to hold that position for a couple of seconds, bring the foot back down to the floor, lift it back up, keeping that knee in contact with the floor. You should be feeling that glute med activate as you're lifting that foot off the floor. If you can't lift your foot off the floor, just really think about squeezing in that left hand glute in the outer side of your left hip. You might start to feel it cramp up. That's to be expected. Holding that raised position for a couple of seconds, bringing that foot back down to the floor, raising it up for a couple of seconds, another 10 seconds. So probably time to get 2 or 3 more reps in. This is when you'll start to feel it burn in the outside of that left hip. From there, we're spinning over to our left-hand side. We're going to be looking to activate that right glute. So in that 90-90 position, this time we're looking to lift that right foot off the floor. So we're squeezing into that right glute there and then slightly lifting that foot off the floor. Holding it for a couple of seconds in that top position, bringing it back down. Contracting again, lifting it up, bringing it back down. Another couple of reps to finish this side off. Should be feeling that burn, that cramping up feeling in that right glute. There we go, coming out of that, we're going to get into a split stance with our left foot forward. So nice and wide with our knees into that split stance, looking to get that chest down towards our left thigh. And then from there, we're going to sit our hips back, straighten that left leg, point our toes up to the ceiling, and we should be feeling a pretty significant hamstring, perhaps calf stretch into there. So trying to straighten that leg, point those toes up to the ceiling. You should be feeling that stretch on the underside of that left leg. Pushing that knee forward and then straightening that leg up. Just using those hands just as a sort of a base of support, just so you're not wobbling all over the place. Sitting back up, try and be nice and tall in that extended position if you can. If you've got more hamstring flexibility, you're going to be able to get into a nicer position as you straighten that leg. Time for one last rep. Staying in this split position with the left leg forward, we're now looking at the right hip flexor. So initially we want to be squeezing that right glute, getting some stretch through the right hip flexor. And then we're going to look to squeeze that glute and straighten that right leg, but keep our hip as low to the floor as possible. So nice and wide with those knees, just trying to straighten that leg, but keep the hips low as we can. So in this position, when the knee's on the floor, we're probably looking at about a 4 out of 10 level of intensity of the stretch. And then when we squeeze and slightly extend, we're probably bringing it up to about a 7 out of 10. Again, holding that squeeze position for 2 or 3 seconds, and then just lowering that knee back to the floor. Should be getting a pretty intense stretch through that right hip flexor. Time for another rep or two. And from there, we're going to switch legs. So we've now got our right leg facing forward. And again, we're going into those hamstring rocks where we're looking to keep that chest as close as we can to the thigh, sitting those legs back, straightening that right leg up, pointing those toes up to the ceiling and getting a pretty big stretch through that right hamstring. Another few seconds on this one. Looking to straighten that leg, point those toes up to the ceiling. From there, we've got 15 seconds. Transition, staying into that same position, but this time we're now looking at that back hip flexor. So we're squeezing that left glute, feeling that stretch through the left hip flexor. And then from there, we're looking to straighten that leg, but keep the hips nice and low to the floor. Slightly bringing that knee off the floor, and you should be feeling that stretch go from about a 4 out of 10 to a 7 out of 10 on that back leg, so that left hip flexor this time. Again, refocusing on squeezing that glute, getting that reciprocal inhibition where we're helping to release that hip flexor on the anterior side of your body. Another 20 seconds. Nice, good quality reps as we're doing this. It's not a race, we're just looking to get as mobile as possible through each of these positions. Time for another rep or two. Coming out of that position into a sort of kneeling position with our bum back onto our heels. This time we're going to look at our adductors, so our inner thigh muscles. We're going to bring our hands out in front of ourselves with our fingertips facing forward. We're going to kick that left leg out to the side with a nice straight leg, keeping our spine nice and neutral. We're then looking to sit our hips back, and we should be feeling a stretch through that left adductor as we do so. So keeping that spine neutral as possible. We don't want to be rounded over, and then we just want to be sitting our hips back with our toes facing forward and our leg nice and straight. Another 20 seconds of this on this left-hand side. Nice deep breaths for another 10 seconds. Bringing both feet back underneath us. This time we're going to go onto the right leg, so it's our right foot we're kicking out, our right leg we're straightening up, and then we're sitting those hips back should now be feeling it on the inside of that right thigh. Don't worry too much if you're finding one side tighter than the other. That's pretty normal. Asymmetries aren't too much to worry about within reason. So this is also one of the stretches, if you haven't seen, Sam's done a hip mobility, a hip flexibility video specifically. So it's about an 8-minute video with 5 different stretches to follow along. So if you haven't already, you can check that out. Also available on our YouTube channel. Another 10 seconds here. So now we're coming into our quadruped position. So we've got our hands below our shoulders, knees below our hips. We're on all fours. We're looking to do some controlled articular rotations through our left leg to begin with. So keeping everything nice and tense, we're extending that left leg, but then bringing that knee out to the side and then bringing that knee back underneath us. We're then going to rotate the other way. So we're going to go one clockwise, one anti-clockwise, getting some movement through that joint whilst maintaining the tension through the rest of our body. So the key here is to maintain as much tension as you can. Mistake you'll often see is people doing these with no real intention. They're just sort of aimlessly moving their hip around, compensating through lower back or wherever just to get the range of motion they're looking for. So we're sticking on our left leg this time. Just think of this as like flossing your joints, similar to how you would floss your teeth. 15-second rest, and then we're going to be going into the right leg. So again, extending that knee back out, bringing it out to the side, bringing it back underneath our hips. We're then going to go out to the side, round behind us, back under our hips, alternating between a clockwise and an anti-clockwise rotation. Another 10 seconds here. Time to squeeze a rep or 2 more in. There we go. So that is the lower body, the hip focus section done. We're now going to move onto that T-spine upper body focused half of the routine. So we're staying in that quadruped position, and we're going to get into some cat camel. So we're extending and then we're flexing at the spine, keeping those hips nice and still. It's one of our staples to get that extension, flexion through the spine, get some control of what our spine's doing, whilst keeping our hips and shoulders still. We can come up onto our fingertips and tuck our chin in to get a deeper stretch as we get into that flexed position. Nice way of looking at it is pretend you've got a piece of string running through your belly button. It's either pulling you down to the floor or it's pulling you up to the ceiling. Another 10 seconds, smoothly working your way from extension to flexion. Now going to be looking to get some rotation through that T-spine, so that mid upper back. We're going to lightly clasp our hands. We're going to put the left elbow on the inside of the right elbow, and then we're going to look to rotate that left elbow up to the ceiling, keeping those hips still. Trying to rotate a little bit further with each rotation, sticking on the left-hand side for this 45 seconds. Another 20 seconds. From there, we're now transitioning to that right-hand side. So our right fingertips are behind our head. Our right elbow is going to go on the inside of that left elbow. And then we're going to rotate up and around with that right side, looking to get some rotation through that upper back. Nice controlled movements. Again, looking to go a little bit further with each rotation. Now coming into a seated position, we'll look to clasp our hands behind our back and pull our shoulder blades back and down, getting a big stretch through that chest. Trying to keep that spine nice and neutral as we do it. So we don't want to be seeing that lower back extend. We want it to be opening up, pulling those shoulder blades back, feeling that stretch through the chest with those nice straight arms behind us with those hands clasped. So for those of you that are spending a lot of time hunched over laptops, over desks, it's important to try and counteract that with some extension through those upper body muscles. Another 15 seconds, feeling that stretch, pulling those shoulder blades back, feel that chest opening up. Nice deep breaths. And staying in this seated position, we're going to finish off with some neck controlled rotation. So one that we have been doing, we'll pretend we've got a bit of string running through our head. It's pulling us down. We're rotating one side and then clockwise. So we're going anti-clockwise, clockwise. Our spine's nice and still, and it is just the head and neck that is rotating. Getting that full range of motion through our neck. The more we do, we should be able to feel ourselves able to get into a bit of a better range of motion. Nice, slow and methodical. One clockwise, one anti-clockwise. Probably time just to squeeze one more in. And that is the end of our hip and T-spine focused mobility flow. So we'll have a couple of minutes rest and then we'll finish off with about 5 minutes of a core circuit. So grab yourselves a quick drink and I'll be back in a couple of minutes. How did everybody find that mobility routine? Let us know in the comments or direct message us. You know, has it helped your hips? Has it helped your upper back? Is there anything you'd like us to do in future classes? Is there anything you want me to focus on in particular? Then let us know and we'll be sure to include that. So we're going to finish off today's class with a 6-minute little core circuit. comprised of 3 different exercises, which we're going to go through twice. So the work to rest period is going to be 30 seconds of the exercise with 15 seconds in between, and we're just going to roll through that for the 6 minutes. So for the first 30 seconds, we're going to be looking at the dead bug progression that we looked at on my Saturday morning class. So if you did that class, you'll be familiar with what we're looking for. So we're looking to get lying back down, about a 45-degree angle at the knee with our heels on the floor, toes raised. From there, if you're lying, normally you're going to have a gap between your lower back and the floor. What we want to do is close that gap up by drawing that lower back into the floor and engaging that core. If you're finding that easy, you can then progress it on into a little march, alternating left and right. But the key is to make sure you've got that tension between your lower back and the floor. If you're finding that march easy, you can then start to bring those knees up so your knees are over your hips, and then keeping that tension between your lower back and your floor. You're then looking to straighten each leg, alternating left and right. So that's going to be the first 30 seconds. The second 30 seconds, we're going to get into our side plank. So we've got a straight line, ankle to shoulder. We've got our ankle above our ankle, hip above our hip, shoulder above our shoulder, and then our shoulder is above our left elbow. We're keeping that position nice and tall. We've got a 15-second rest. We're going to get into your dead bug again. So if you do just the hold in the first 30 seconds, you find that easy, you can then progress on to the alternating march. And then the fourth exercise in the circuit is going to be a side plank on your right hand side. So mirror image of that left hand side, we're in that position there, and then we're just going to rotate through that sequence once more. I'll pop the timer on, which gives us a 10-second countdown period, and then we're going to be starting with that dead bug progression. So if you haven't done this before, or you're not feeling particularly confident in your core, I would just start with that lower back into the floor, holding that tension there. You shouldn't be able to get that hand between the floor and your lower back if you are doing this properly. You should feel a lot of tension building up. It should be pretty difficult to maintain that level of tension for the 30-second period. And if you are finding it okay, start to add in those marches. At the moment you feel your rib cage start to flare or your lower back start to flare, that's where you want to bring it back down to just the hold. 15 seconds to get yourself into that side plank on our left-hand side position. Another couple of seconds. And then we're bringing ourselves up, getting that straight line, stacking everything above everything, and maintaining a nice, still, controlled position for the 30-second hold. We don't want to see those hips drop. We don't want to see our chest point up to the ceiling or our chest point down to the floor. We want to resist any motion and keep ourselves nice and still. Another 10 seconds on this hold. There you go, coming back into your dead bug. So if you found it easy in the first one, you can start to get into that march, keeping the tension. Should be no change in the level of tension through that lower back, through that midline. And if that was dead easy, keeping that tension, extending one leg. So increasing that distance from the midline whilst trying to create and maintain the same level of tension. If those are too difficult, just stay in that hold position. Get comfortable, engaging that core properly, drawing that lower back into the floor and holding that engaged, tense position. A couple more seconds. And then 15 seconds of spinning over for that side plank on the right-hand side. Another 5 seconds, then we're going to be lifting those hips off the floor. Getting into that side plank position, we can lift that arm out to help counterbalance ourselves if we want. Other than that, we're looking for a nice, still, controlled position. Halfway through. So that is one time through the circuit. We're just going to go through those 4 exercises once more, and then we'll be done for today's class. So getting into that dead bug position again, drawing that lower back into the floor. Probably looking now to get onto that march, keeping those hips still, keeping that lower back tight to the floor, keeping that core engaged. We're alternating a left and right march, nothing too dramatic. We don't want that need to be passing our hip. Just nice, small, controlled marches. There should be no change in the level of tension through your midline. Another few seconds, time for another couple of reps. From there, getting into that side plank on our left-hand side position. A few more seconds, make the most of the little rest period you've got. And then we're going into that side plank on the left-hand side, lifting those hips off the floor, staying nice and still. Those hips aren't rotating, they're not dropping, staying dead still for the 30-second hold. If you are struggling, just cut the 30-second time period shorter, have a bit more rest. I'd rather you do a good quality 15 or 20 seconds rather than a poor quality 30 seconds. Another few seconds on this side. There we go, last one coming into that dead bug. So if you're finding that march easy, you can then look to start with those knees above our hips and extend our legs out. Again, keeping that tension. So telltale signs that you're struggling is when your ribs start flaring or your lower back starts flaring. So to do this sort of core training effectively, you need to sort of be fairly in tune with your body, and you're only really cheating yourself if you just do lots of reps where you know that you're not actually properly engaging your core. So if you can do this position, this is the level of tension you want in the progressions as well. Another 5 seconds. Coming out of that and then finishing off with a side plank on our right-hand side for the final, the 8th and final 30-second hold of this core circuit. So 30 seconds left, lifting those hips off the floor, keeping that nice straight line, ankle through to shoulder, and keeping it dead still. "15 seconds left. There we go, that finishes the core circuit for today's class and finishes today's class completely. Today's lunchtime class. We have got a boxing class tonight for you at 7 p.m. So details of that can be found on our Facebook group, Rigs Remote, or the link through our YouTube channel. So keep your eyes out for that. That is at 7 o'clock tonight with Sam. I'll be back tomorrow evening at 6 o'clock to do another mobility. We'll do some more flexibility, some more stretching in tomorrow night's class. As always, let us know what you think. Anything you want me to include, let me know and I can include that in tomorrow night's class. Brilliant. I'll see you guys tomorrow evening. Thank you.